Good evening, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Speak for Yourself podcast. My name is Casey, and I'm so happy that you're here tonight. We have a returning guest, my first guest of all time. I think he was episode 2 or something like that, and we've just been trucking along ever since. How's it going, Clint?
It did look like I was pulling the horn.
Yeah.
It's good, man. I was on with the Anomaly today, and on with another lovely lady. Used to be a journalist. I'm blanking on her name right now. I'll look it up. But yeah, it's been a hectic day. Also went to the doctor. Found out I don't have a hernia. So that's all good things.
That was up in your ribs or something like that? Is that not your ribs? Or was
Yeah,
it?
oh, it's
Well,
it's
you're
just
talking about something else that was in your up in your ribs or something, right?
it's just beneath my floating rib on the left
Okay.
side. It's like this little tiny bump, but it's called a lipoma, which is just like a fatty tissue that solidifies for some reason. It's genetic. It just happens to people. I have like 2 or 3 of them like randomly around my body. They're very small, but I actually had got a not an MRI, but the whatever it's called,
CAT
the
scan
other.
or something.
No, not that one either. The one with the little fucking thingy. It doesn't matter. And the first person that did that for me said that they knew that it was a hernia. And then my insurance got canceled because I was never sent a bill, so I couldn't do anything about it for like 7 months. Well, I could have, but I just didn't want to pay out of pocket. So I waited until I finally got my insurance reinstated. And then I go back and I get a second opinion because I kept feeling it. I was like, I feel like I can like almost like shift this thing over my rib. And if I can actually move my intestines that are protruding through my abdomen and then I can lift them up over my rib, that's weird. So I don't think that's what it is. And it's not. So hooray, no surgery.
Well, that's good, man. No surgery is a good thing.
Yeah.
I had a scare about a month ago, something like that, where they thought I had a blockage in my intestines or some shit like that, and ended up not being that after I got the MRI. Thank goodness. So yeah,
Good,
I know
dude.
a little bit of the relief.
Yeah. I mean, even if it was a hernia and I had to have surgery, that's not the end of the world. But it was just nice to feel like I don't have to take 2 weeks off the gym, you know?
Yeah, that was my next question. If it had, precluded you from working out or anything like that.
No, I mean, I was going lighter though because I thought I had a hernia, so I didn't want to like blast my intestines through my stomach. So I was like, I definitely haven't been going as hard as I used to. So now I can go full bore again. So that's great.
Dude, that's the best. Yeah. I love a good workout, and I love not having to hold back and stuff like that. So I'm with you. The last time that we talked, we kind of did a deep dive on ESG. And since then, it's done a little rebranding. There's been some protest and that sort of thing with Budweiser and Target and stuff like that. What's your take on all of that? Has it been successful in deterring the ESG part? And I mean, obviously ESG played some sort of role in those two businesses and their demise, so to speak. I mean, they aren't going to die off or anything, but
well, the brand Bud Light seems to be.
Yeah, they might.
Yeah, I mean, Anheuser-Busch, the parent company, should be fine just because they have I think over 100 brands under their umbrella, and they probably will be adjusting given how detrimental that was. I mean, for those that don't know and that want to downplay this and make it seem like it was nothing, Bud Light was the #1 beer in America. Okay, that's not nothing. That's a big victory against the ESG fight. And for those that don't understand it, I'll just briefly explain. Diversity, equity, inclusion is part of ESG. If you have any sort of questions or you're trying to improve upon your ESG score so that you can then get more of your shares of your stock acquired from the biggest money managers on earth, State Street, BlackRock, Vanguard, et cetera, then you can quite easily, by doing a marketing campaign that appeals to some group that needs to be included. In this case, it was the whatever his name is, her name is, whatever. What's her name?
Oh yeah. Dylan Mulvaney.
Yes. I don't know what group that was particularly trying to be inclusive towards, but That's what they were doing. I think it's quite clear that's what the attempt was, because from a marketing perspective, it doesn't make a ton of sense if your brand is the number one beer in America and everyone that drinks it, for the most part, is conservative leaning, or not everyone, but a lot of the people, a huge percentage of your fan base is like country dudes.
Yeah, that's like a blue collar thing.
Yeah, big time. So you're not going to go after 1% of the population, or say if it's appealing to even 15 or 20% of the population. You don't do that to the detriment of your primary customer base unless you are a lunatic. And perhaps the marketing guru behind that idea was a lunatic. I don't think that the CEO is, and I don't think that they would have ever done this if it weren't for the ESG incentive. So they have now they're laying off hundreds of employees, which is sad, but it's as far as I'm concerned, this is what has to happen. We need to see businesses that do not put their do not honor their fiduciary duty and do not look after their investors and their shareholders first and foremost. They need to suffer terribly, and I am grateful to see it.
Yeah, and I listened to your interview with Vivek, and at this point, I've listened to so many of his interviews. I'm not sure from which one this came from, but he, it was either a book or a business that he started to, I think it was a business that he started to combat ESG.
Strive Capital Management. Yeah.
Yeah. And I thought that was a very interesting, way to do things.
Well, it's necessary. I mean, what he's basically doing is creating a money manager avenue for people who are going to actually do what every other money manager throughout history has done, which is pursue the greatest returns on investment for the people that you are a fiduciary for. So, I don't think that he's very locked in on that right now, given that he's running for president.
Sure.
But I think that any entry, any new entrepreneurial efforts to try and undermine this behemoth is great.
Yeah, and it's so weird to think of his business as part of like a parallel economy when it's been the standard model for, all of history, that sort of thing. But now all of a sudden it's not.
Yeah. Well, things changed rapidly, man. It's amazing that, this idea really only took hold. I mean, it was really in its infancy in 2004. It didn't really start to even have any hold at all until like the 2012, 13, 14 arena. And it didn't really pick up steam until 2018, maybe 17, 18. And then it just became everything. Like that's an amazing adoption pace. And anytime you see something like that, especially something that's so detrimental ultimately, and so counter to what capitalism has always been about, that the government's involved. And sure enough, they were.
So do you think that these strikes, since they were successful, or protests, whatever you want to call them, boycotts, probably a better word for it, given how successful they were, do you think that has deterred ESG at all? Or are they going to, because I've seen a couple of things floating around that's looking like they're going to rebrand, that sort of thing, and then try it again.
Yeah. I mean, they already have the Sustainable Development Goals, the SDGs from the United Nations. That's a big rebranding effort, in my opinion. It's also broader than ESG. So they're going to call it that. They're going to call it, any new woke speak that you're like, that sounds weird. Yeah, that's it. That's ESG again. Like, I think that's the easiest way. Like, if it strikes you as like, why would this be in the purview of someone who's trying to sell a product, you could just assume that it's communism. Like that.
Yeah.
Because for me, that's what this stuff is. Especially after listening to James Lindsay, who has kind of rounded out my knowledge base about this because of his deep dives into the academic literature, which really inspired much of this. It becomes quite clear that this is not just about some sort of totalitarian New World Order thing, as much as it is that paired with communal fascism. It's communism and fascism. It's basically using fascism to get to this communist utopia. It's a nightmare. It's like I'm just so grateful that when I first started talking about this a year and a half ago, no one, or 2 years ago, like no one basically knew what I was talking about. And now you're hard pressed to find someone who doesn't have at least a broad understanding of what ESG is. And that's amazing.
Yeah, I agree. Uh, you were probably, yeah, I think it was you were my first exposure to that. So
Awesome. Yeah. I mean, I'm sure I was for quite a few people, and it's, it's just, it's so important. So like, I'm not kidding when I say like I am really, really grateful that this picked up steam. Like I could have just been the crazy dude in the wilderness, warning people about it, and it never have seen the light of day. But that's not what happened. A lot of people are now privy. I mean, all the way up to it being discussed on Joe Rogan. It's like this is a well-known thing at this point.
yeah. Well, so another thing I wanted to ask you about, and we're kind of leading up to the main topic of tonight, but one of the things I wanted to ask you about is some of these bank closures and seizures by the government, like Silicon Valley Bank, and I think there's another one a couple of days after that. Um,
Signature.
yeah. Uh, so one of the things I wanted to ask you about is it nearly seems like when they're doing that and they're other bigger banks are acquiring these and buying them out, they're nearly consolidating into like a couple of big banks, and that's all that's going to be left.
Yeah.
Um,
That's the idea.
yeah,
I mean, that's what's so disturbing about it is like it's under the pretense of too big to fail, and what they've done ever since that phraseology was implemented is just make those banks bigger and more dangerous if they were to fail. So yeah, it's just clearly not an accident. I mean, the regulations are ultimately written by J.P. Morgan Chase and Goldman Sachs and Bank of America and the biggest financial interests on earth, and it's not an accident that they end up being the companies that are turned to or turned towards in times of crisis. Jamie Dimon, sits in on every time there's an economic calamity. He gets front row seating with the president of the United States and the head of the Treasury and the head of the Federal Reserve to discuss how will J.P. Morgan Chase save the day. Like, what are we even talking about? Sorry, I don't even know where you were going with the question, but I just had to rant.
no, you're good. Well, another concern of mine is, if we get down to 4 major banks or, whatever it's going to be, and they start deplatforming people for wrongthink, you don't have another place to go at that point.
Yes.
And that's another concern of mine.
Well, it should be. I mean, especially that you're, a public-facing figure. Like if you have dissident political views, it has already been, quite clear that if you get to a high enough level of prominence, then you will be debanked. It happened, even if you're not super high profile, it happened to the Canadian truckers too. And not just the Canadian truckers themselves, but the people that donated to them. It's like over 100 people, I believe, had their credit card accounts, checking accounts, everything just shut down like that.
Yeah, and that's wild. I don't think people fully grasp like the gravity of that situation and what all that entails if your account is frozen or if you're debanked in any form. Like, I mean, that just creates problems on problems on problems.
Yeah,
for people.
And I mean, the reality is that ultimately, if this social credit framework, which is really what we're discussing right now, if it becomes pervasive enough, it'll get to the point where if you've been debanked from somewhere, then it is highly probable you will not be able to open an account elsewhere. It'll be very challenging because there will be, almost certainly there will be something in the charters, in the licensing processes for banking institutions where they say like, yeah, this guy's been debanked and you're even if they don't make it explicit where they go, you can't open an account here, they'll just make it so that the paperwork is so crazy to onboard someone like that they'll just say, not worth our time. Like the government could just do that through the regulatory framework. Like that's the one thing that people are really bad at identifying, as we learned during the COVID and the vaccine mandate period, is that if it's not stated explicitly as like the government is directing this business to do this, so, therefore terrible, unconstitutional, criminal action. Like they will just coerce, just as we saw with the Twitter leaks and the Facebook files that came out a few days ago. That's what they do. They don't say it explicitly. Much of this is not going to be documented in a way that is, evidentiary of criminality. They're going to pick up the phone and say, "Hey, I need you to do this," and then they do it. Or they
it's very wink, wink, nudge, nudge,
right?
Sort of thing.
Or even if they put it in an email, it's like, "Hey, we want you to look at this again." It's still not a threat, but they'll be like, "I'm following up." My first email, it said it was a recommendation. My second email, 72 hours later, where I go, "Hey, just checking up. We looked at this again. Doesn't look like you've taken any action against these accounts. What's going on?" That's not like a friendly, "Hey, what's up?" That's like, "Hey, dude, do this." And then you drag the CEOs of these big, tech firms up on Capitol Hill, and you threaten threaten them with nationalization, things like that. And it's like, oh yeah, fucking, of course they did it then. Of course they're going to respond to the DHS or the CDC or the FBI or the CIA or the White House. Like they're going to respond and they're going to do as the government dictates, because the government controls so much money and so much power and so much regulatory fucking morass that they can just leverage it. They can just coerce these companies into doing their bidding and ultimately circumventing your constitutional rights. And this is why the government must be shrunk. As long as they are managing and dictating where $5 trillion annually in tax receipts, that's not to include the deficit spending, and that's not to include all of the other manipulation that they have in the economy more broadly, the printing press, the manipulation of the interest rates. I mean, they are a fucking behemoth, dude. They run the goddamn global economy to a large extent. That's just a level of power that cannot exist. It's too dangerous. It's like having 6,000 nuclear warheads pointed at each other. It's fucking crazy. We have to end it.
Which is also happening.
It is. Yep.
But yeah, one of the things that we get a lot whenever we talk about this is that people will say, but it's a private company, bro.
Right.
And that whenever you're being coerced like that and threatened non-specifically with being like regulated into oblivion, that sort of thing, it's no longer a private company. It's
right. Well, this is why I was so frustrated with some of the more autistic libertarians over the past 2 years since the vaccine mandates really started to roll out. It's just like, look, if a private business is being coerced, which we now know for sure that they are, but back then we didn't know for sure. We just kind of fucking knew unless you were stupid.
Yeah, we knew.
We knew. They all said, well, this is a property rights issue and you can't intervene and you can't. It's like, look, if it's a private business that has a state granted kind of oligopoly, if not a monopoly force in many instances, you just can't have them violating constitutional rights in such an egregious fashion, particularly when it's just logically doesn't add up. It doesn't make sense that you would have businesses making the decision by their own volition that they're going to alienate a tremendous portion of the population. It's not as a business owner myself for a very long time. On its face, it's illogical. And as I said earlier, when you see something that's happening rapidly and it's illogical, it's almost always catalyzed by the government. And it's frustrating that some of the libertarians were like, until they saw it in writing, they're not going to believe it. And I would imagine, even though I have all of them blocked now, even after seeing it in writing, I would imagine they're still arguing that, well, they're not threatening them explicitly in these emails, so it's still not, it's still a private business and it's still not unconstitutional. It's just like, I couldn't disagree more with those people.
Yeah, it's incredible that it's going over their head, It's incredible watching it. So I want to get to the main topic, and this is all a lead up to this. I want to discuss CBDCs.
Drum roll, please. Let's go.
CBDCs.
Yep.
A lot of my audience and people in my immediate circle, who watch us or know me may not know what that is and why it's important to know, why it is a cautionary tale, and why we should object to it with
Yeah.
every fiber of your being.
Yes.
So first off, can you tell them what it is?
Sure.
And I guess the status of where it's at right now in development.
Yeah, I'll start with what it is. So CBDC is a central bank digital currency. It is modeled off of the same general framework that Bitcoin and all these other cryptocurrencies that have arisen over the past 15 years, most of them less than that. It's modeled in that same fashion. It's going to be an electronic currency, but the difference is that instead of having a decentralized ledger where all of the transactions are stored, it will be, and instead of having a capped supply, it will have a centralized ledger that is maintained probably by the Federal Reserve, if not the United States Treasury directly. And they will have the capacity to add to the currency supply by increasing the electronic digits that exist in the peasants' accounts. And it is, in my opinion, it is the ultimate conclusion, or the inevitable conclusion, I should say, of the death of fiat currency. They have realized that they are just not capable of managing this debt load, and they have to transition, because otherwise there will be a hyperinflationary death spiral or burn off that eliminates the economy and much of their wealth. So they're because it is so much, it is so superior to the existing system. Because to explain, or let me give a little bit detail as to why, it gives them the capacity, instead of having to run a printing press or any of that, it's all electronic. So obviously it's just like enter a digit, here we go, boom, there you go, there's more money. But it also has the capacity for redemption, where they can extract that money and vanish that money out of existence. I hate to even call it money, because it's really not, but I'm just going to continue to use it because it's easy for people to understand.
Sure.
It's just like electronic symbols that mean nothing. I mean, like truly it is. But
numbers out in the matrix.
yeah, it's code that's just floating in the backdrop, and you're like, what the fuck is that? But it'll give them the power to essentially shut the lights off on political dissidents without any sort of reprisal, without any capacity for appeal, because the entire ledger itself is not public. It would be held privately by the federal government. So if you want to try and make an appeal to them to say, hey, you just stole my money, they're going to say, no, we didn't. And how can you prove otherwise? And the answer is you won't be able to. So it's terribly dangerous, man.
Yeah. Have you ever gone back and forth with the IRS? Like, it's damn near impossible to
No.
do anything with them. And
Yeah,
if you are lucky enough to even get a response back, it's like a 6-month thing in between letters that you write, or you do it online and then they send you a physical mail letter, that sort of thing.
Well, I've dealt with that with like the Department of Real Estate in California, and that was very similar, just a bureaucratic nightmare.
Yeah, there's just no way around it.
Right.
If they say you owe money or whatever, and you wanna combat it or whatever, it's a whole ordeal sort of thing.
Yeah.
Well, one thing that you said that was interesting in that that part was that whenever the transfer happens, they'll be able to keep their money and prevent the hyperinflation sort of deal, and everything from collapsing in on itself, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
How does that part work?
Well, I believe that's the incentive for the transition, because the debt load that the U.S. government is carrying cannot be paid off. It just cannot. We're talking $32 trillion. The level of fiscal just tightening that would be necessary to address it would be backbreaking. I mean, it would put us into a depression for sure. So they're never going to do it. So it's my opinion that the powers that be, the financial interests, many of which hold those treasuries, are looking at themselves going, well, we can't default on this. First off, we're like, to a certain extent, we're defaulting on ourselves because we own a lot of this, but then also the broader economy would be demolished. So they don't want to see that happen either, because the rest of their assets are all invested in the broader economy. So what better con than to take the greatest con in human history and improve upon it? Because that's what the Federal Reserve is. It's the greatest con in human history. It's the capacity to dictate how much currency exists in the system and the interest rates, the underlying interest rates by which the vast majority of borrowing is predicated on. I mean, that is just an immense amount of power. So instead of relinquishing that, they're going to improve upon it. It's fucking genius. You know, hey, even though I hate them, like with every, fiber of my being, I can still respect the hustle. Like that's incredible. But just the fact that like this exists and a huge percentage of the population now knows about it, and they are still convinced that this is a better way to live than how it was in 1910. Like, wow, what an incredible con job that you have propagandized the vast majority of people on Earth to believe that central banking is to your benefit, that giving a state-granted monopoly on the creation of the most important market signal on Earth to a handful of the most powerful people on Earth, and it's to your benefit. You fucking rube you. Like, that is so crazy. But they did it. I like, God bless them.
Well, one of the things that I heard that I found interesting was the way that they're going to incentivize people into accepting this whenever it rolls out. And I've heard of two different things, and you can add on to this if you've heard more. But one of them is that your taxes will be instant. They will finally calculate it for you, and the bad part, they'll just take it out.
Gets worse than that, dude.
Sort of thing.
Gets worse than that. If you're not a fan of Keynesianism, it makes it so that they can, or modern monetary theory for that matter, UBI is almost certainly going to be the carrot to get people to accept this. And then when they have...
Oh, really? UBI?
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
Okay.
Because like they're just going to tell people, hey, we're starting UBI. You get 2,000 fucking digital butt fucks a month. And if you don't have an account set up for it, well, then you don't get it. So everyone's going to go, well, I want my digital BFs.
Yeah, well, the second incentive I was going to name goes along with that. They're going to incentivize you by doing what you just said, and then there will be a time cap on it. And if you don't make the account within the time cap, they're going to take money out of it, or you're only going to get a certain percentage of that as time goes on until you do it, until you make the transition.
Yeah.
And the rest of your money, like your actual bank that you have right now, same thing with that. If you don't convert it, if you convert it right on the dot, you might get, 100% or 125% or whatever. And that's going to be decreasing the longer it takes you to make the transition.
But you also have to add, like, the entire concept of Keynesianism and modern monetary theory and the idea of stimulating the economy and their belief that the only way, or the only thing that's necessary to deal with the inflation that inevitably arises because of their profligate spending is to remove liquidity from the economy. And whose liquidity are they going to remove? Theirs or yours? They're going to remove yours. So if they say, hey, there's a lot of inflation, we're going to, we'll make it graduated based off of income levels, but we're going to just extract, $1 trillion out of the economy, over the next year. So like they have that power. It really removes all of our autonomy, our independence, our capacity to just be free. It's like, it's game over. And then you tie that in. So it's going to be UBI, CBDC, and social credit scores, like all of it. And they all work together perfectly. I mean, like beautifully from a totalitarian perspective. Like it's just the perfect recipe for complete control. You won't even have to really worry about, fighting people or putting people in cages or putting them in gulags. It's just like, I unperson you. You have no funds to fight me. You can no longer probably go and purchase a firearm because I'm sure at some point they'll ban that. You can't get employment. You can't get gainful employment because you've been impersoned. And like, we have some law where you can only get paid via ETF which obviously is going to function off the CBDC or the FedNow system. It's like it's a bloodless revolution stopper. Like it really is. Like it can make it so that it just completely makes it impossible for people to fight back.
Yeah, and that's why this is so dangerous.
Yep.
Which is kind of the next thing I want to get into. The reasons that we should be against this, and that's the main big one. But if you want to get,
have I not made it clear?
yeah. But if you want to get more specific, they can turn off your ability to purchase items, or they can put a limit on how many of these items you can purchase. So you can take gun ammo and firearms. You can put it into that category. You can take red meat and put it in that category, since there's a war being waged against that, or starting to.
You have to eat bugs this week. You've met your meat supply cap.
Yeah. They'll put a cap on how much gas you can purchase per month, or how much electricity you can use per month, that sort of thing.
They could just make it illegal outright to purchase fossil fuels. I could totally envision that. I mean, I'm not saying soon, but I could totally see that, because they have the Agenda 2030, and then they have some other additional, limits, net zero limits that they want for 2040, 50, things like that. I could totally see by 2050 where they just make it completely impossible to acquire fuel. And then on the flip side of that, you have electric cars, which are ultimately, very tied into the grid and could ultimately just be recalled by the state via autopilot. I mean, it really gets creepy. It really does get to a Black Mirror level.
Yeah. Oh, I just started that the 6th season today, by the way. Oh, so good.
Oh, is it? Nice. I haven't seen the last season yet. Dude,
the first episode is so wild. Anyway, I do have a creepy story about a partially electric car. So about 9 months ago, something like that, my family and my mother-in-law went to the mountains and in New Mexico, and we went in her brand new car. I mean, she got this, like within the same week that we went, right? Mm-hmm. And it's my turn to drive. And so I'm driving, and, my wife and her mother are talking, and I'm getting involved in the conversation or whatever. And, like when you're driving, you're not paying attention to the road 100% of the time, all the time. Like, as in, your eyes can go like over here and then look back really quick, that sort of thing. Sure. And that's what happened. I looked over to see my wife saying something, or maybe it was her mom saying something, whatever. And the car literally beeped and told me to keep my eyes on the road. Oh, yeah. The car is literally watching me through the rear view mirror, like a camera there. Yep. And that is the creepiest thing I've ever come across.
Which means basically that they already have facial recognition that's running on the interior of your vehicle, because otherwise they wouldn't be able to see where your eyes are and then see if your eyes are open or where they're focused. I mean, look, all of this technology is absolutely fantastic if you are able to opt into it freely, and you can opt out of it, most importantly. And thirdly, the government doesn't have any fucking control over it. Those are like the 3 requirements for technology to be a blessing to civilization. If any of those 3 prerequisites are not met, then technology is just a very fancy cage. And
That's a good way of putting it.
I'm getting increasingly nervous that we are headed towards a technocratic, technologically advanced hellscape. And it's up to the people to, and I hate to rely on the people because they haven't really had my back over the past 3 years, but it is up to the people to realize that, all of the comforts that come from these innovations, while they are a blessing, you have to be privy and you have to be cautious about the downsides. And that includes social media and it includes everything else. But it's not, you don't turn to the government to ban your child from using TikTok. You fucking be a parent. You take responsibility. God damn it. So that's what concerns me about things, is like, as people do become aware of some of the stuff that we're talking about, instead of just taking personal responsibility, which is what we just desperately lack in America in particular, but the world over more broadly. And instead they turn towards the government to try and solve these things, which is only going to make it worse.
Yeah, and by the way, it is absolutely facial recognition because whenever she gets in, it has a profile just for her, and it changes all the car's settings to whatever she
Yep.
likes, that
Yep.
sort of thing. And then when I was driving, it recognized me as a guest driver, that sort of thing.
Yeah, that's wild.
Wild.
I rented a car. I went to visit my family in California for a family reunion last month, and I rented a. It was like, cheap little new car, but it was brand new. I think it was a Toyota Camry, I think. But it had intelligent cruise control where it was able to, actually sense where the vehicle in front was, and I could set it at, an adjustable cruise control where it would just maintain. So I'm driving because I went to San Luis Obispo to visit them, even though my family's from San Diego, but that's where my aunt was. So I'm driving through LA, right? Through fucking LA traffic, like rush hour traffic, and I just put on cruise control at 65, and like it also has lane assistance, so the car keeps itself in the lane, and it also slows down through the traffic, and it accelerates once the cars in front of me start to go. So I basically didn't have to touch anything, like the entire straight shot up there. It was amazing. So like I'm not a Luddite. I think that these innovations are fucking awesome, but it has to be paired with a sense of personal responsibility and skepticism of state power. If it's not, then we're doomed.
Yeah, for sure. And kind of back to the CBDCs and being able to control what you can buy and how much you can buy, that sort of thing. Uh, the scary part is there's just someone out there that can push a button and literally prevent you from buying these things. Like your card won't work when you swipe it on
Yeah, dude.
this or that item, or it's not even going to be a person that's turning it on and off. It's going to be an automatic. Here's your limits. You've been over your limit for the month, so your card will no longer work for this product.
Yeah,
That sort of thing.
I mean,
And that's the scary thing.
they've already done that with firearms in this country through federal licensed firearm dealers. It's like you have to wait 10 days in many states, or 30 in some, and 72 hours in others. It's like, and then if you're a felon, or if you just can't get approval on the background check, like you may not be able to acquire one at all. And then you have the January Sixers that they they had their credit card purchase history turned over from their banking institutions to the federal government that was investigating J6, and then they did it based off of geofencing. They did it based off of anybody that had been within 5 miles or whatever it is of the Capitol on that day, and then they just backtracked it, and they said, did any of these people that were within 5 miles of the Capitol on January 6th, in their history over the 90 preceding days, did any of them acquire firearms? That's fucking crazy, bro. That actually happened. That's actually what they did to what was by and large, a peaceful protest. By and large, clearly, it was by and large peaceful. That's wild. That is a wild totalitarian overreach. That is illegal search and seizure. It's against the First Amendment. It's against the Second Amendment. I mean, it is just pure unconstitutionality. It's like unadulterated unconstitutionality. And people just are like, yeah, well, the government does what it does. So I don't know how I live amongst you people. How are people not more bothered by this stuff? It's crazy to me.
Yeah. In the a while back, there was an article or a leak that was saying people that purchase firearms through a certain bank, the bank handed over that list of people to the three-letter agencies.
That's what I'm talking about. It was Bank of America.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, that's the case that I'm talking about. That's what happened, but it was to the J6ers. Fucking nuts, dude.
Yeah, and that's why it's so imperative that whenever these things start rolling out, and well, even before that, when there's talk about it, a lot of times the government will put out a feeler, whether it's an article or a tweet or something like that.
For sure,
that's attention grabbing.
It's a test run.
They'll test the waters of what people think and what their reactions are going to be to these things. And whenever that happens with CBDCs, like it is of the utmost imperative. You have to push back on that with everything that you have, because that is the end all be all.
Everything, man. I could not agree more. I think I've said it before. It's the ultimate red line of red lines. It is pure financial slavery. And people will get upset that I'm using slavery in that way. I don't give a fuck. That's what it would be. You idiots.
Yep, completely.
That's what it would be. It would be pure financial slavery. So yeah, no, I completely agree with you. It has to be a galvanizing, catalyzing moment for outright rebellion, and hopefully peacefully.
Yeah. And that's why, cash has been deemed the last bastion of privacy. And that's why, everything excluding firearms, cash is king on that. They're still going to track your firearms if you pay with cash, that sort of thing. But everything else,
Well,
that's how you prevent, being tracked right now. If there's a limit on red meat, and you paid with cash, they can't track that sort of thing.
Yeah.
But
Well,
with
cash,
the CBDC,
cash or barter,
yeah, with the CBDC, they can track that sort of thing.
Yeah, they'll track everything, dude. And I mean, for the record, I think that they're largely doing that already with your credit card transactions. I don't think that the January Sixers are the only group of people to ever have experienced that in America. Let me just make that very blunt. I think that it's the one time that we know it because they started to prosecute the people based off of it. In fact, we already know that they've been doing it to drug dealers and anybody that's suspected of a crime. But I think it's happening more broadly, and I think that it's happening to innocent people, and it's just not constitutional. And I've been harping on this repeatedly on my show as of late. It's like, if we don't have consequences for people that violate the Constitution, like, we're doomed, because the fatal flaw, in my opinion, as to the founders' vision for this country was that they believed that the American people would never stand for outright corruption. That they would obviously vote out anyone that was taking them to war without a declaration or without justification or with deceit and lies. They would never vote into power people who were, had an allegiance to a foreign nation like Ukraine over America. They would never do that.
Or laundering money through
exactly.
foreign
But
conflict.
They're doing all of that. And the American people are voting for that. And as long as that's the case, I don't know how we get through this. I really don't. And I think that, the separation of powers and the judicial remedy route is only fruitful if there is actual criminal penalties, not even civil. It has to be criminal. I'm talking bars for a long time for people that continuously violate the Constitution, egregiously so. You have to go to prison for that. And it's bizarre to me that hasn't been, that wasn't included in the framework for this nation. That's surprising to me, honestly. In hindsight, it's like, God, that seems like a really easy fix to make. Hey, the Bill of Rights, we're not kidding about it. I mean, I think that from our founders' perspective, it was like, okay, the American people, we gave you the Second Amendment. So if they violate these 10 things, you deal with it. I mean, that's really what they were saying, which is a beautiful message, but only to a population that hears it and feels it and is willing to do that. And clearly the American people aren't. So I just
Well, the
wish that
wool's
we had
been pulled over their eyes, man,
Well, yeah, sure. It has, but I mean, you're being bled from inflation. You're being bled to finance, proxy wars against the largest nuclear power on Earth. You were locked in your home. Your kids' schools were shut down. You were forced to mask for no reason. You were forced to put something in your body against your will, or else you couldn't work. Like, if you're still a fucking sleep, wake up. I grant you, you're right. A lot of people have had the wool pulled over their eyes, but damn, dude, what does it take? What does it take? Not now, then when?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've often wondered how much more it would take to get people active.
Starvation. I've always said it.
That's a good one. That's a good incentive.
Yeah. I mean, I really think that until the hyperinflationary period or the brutal depression period of our late stage empire comes to pass, we're just not going to see the type of energy and the willingness to risk things to remedy all of this. People are too comfortable. Even though everything is kind of slowly being ripped out from underneath them, they're still too comfortable.
Yeah. Well, I guess we'll see where that leads. I want to transition a little bit to, you've had a few of the presidential candidates on your show. And I kind of wanted to ask you how, like where you're at with all of that, including Joshua Smith, who recently announced.
Yeah.
And by the way, I was in that space the other night when he announced it and you asked your question. And I really like that question because now when I have him on my show, I don't have to ask it.
Oh, perfect.
Well, so yeah, where are you at with all the candidates? And
yeah, I mean, for your audience's sake, I'll recap my question to Josh just so they know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
You know, I had as a delegate for, you know, the I guess it was just a little over a year ago now, the national convention. I had gone there on my own dime to cast my delegate vote to replace the entire board of the old LP with, you know, Mises Caucus approved folks, and Angela McArdle as the chair, and Josh Smith was my vote for vice chair. And he resigned, you know, like 9 months later or something like that. It wasn't long after. And I was disappointed, you know, and so I asked him, you know, why did that happen? And like, why would I again support you? You know, like, if I support you and you just like change your mind 6 months later, like that sucks for me, right? So that's what I asked him.
Fair question.
Yeah, I think it's a totally fair question, and I'm glad that he was willing to, you know, he took it in the way he should, because I think it is a fair question, and I think he knows that. Unfortunately, you know, he doesn't want to throw a lot of people under the bus, so he didn't really answer it, you know, in the way that I would like to hear, because it would require him bad mouthing a lot of people, and he doesn't want to do that. And for the record, I respect that. So I think he and I will have a private phone call at some point where we get to the bottom of it, because I would like to understand, because it doesn't make any sense to me. So setting that aside, you know, obviously Josh is my buddy and I like him. So I'm not.
Yeah, I didn't know if y'all had a previous relationship built or if you're just spitballing.
No, he's a homie for sure.
Okay.
So yeah, and I think, you know, ideologically, he's probably as close to me as anybody that's running right now, but it doesn't change the fact that I still have to get answers to that. So as for the, you know, duopoly candidates, well, and let me just say, for the rest of the LP candidates, I'm not impressed yet. Just totally being honest.
Not a one.
No, I'm not.
I do love his platform, though.
Yeah, me too. So that's where I'm at with the LP candidates as of now. For the Democrat candidates, obviously, I hate almost all of them, almost entirely. So that's not too surprising. But I think that RFK Jr. is a tremendous addition to the dialogue coming from the left. You know, his willingness to discuss the abolition of the FBI, the CIA, ending the war in Ukraine, avoiding World War III, avoiding nuclear holocaust, like, you know, Fauci's shenanigans, prosecution of people that are involved in this stuff, like awesome. And then he's also a Democrat and he sucks. So like, you know, he's got a lot of good things, but I probably wouldn't support him in a general election, but I would love to see him on the debate stage against Joe Biden if that could possibly come to pass, which it won't, because the DNC won't allow it, because if that were to happen, it would be just absolute massacre. It would be insane. So I'm rooting for RFK on the Democrat primary side for sure. And then on the GOP side, you know, I've wavered a lot on this because I like a lot of, you know, the new dialogue that's happening on the populist right. And I think a lot of that is a product of, you know, obviously the Ron Paul revolution, but then really the libertarian perspective on the lockdowns has prevailed ultimately in the GOP voting base. Like this was insane. This was unconstitutional. This was illegal. There needs to be prosecuted. Like that's as far as I'm concerned, like any of the good libertarians, we were saying that in 2020, for God's sakes. That is now kind of common accepted narrative amongst the broader GOP. That's fucking tremendous. So
yeah, as it should be.
Yes, and it should be, for sure. The Democrat voters, still out of their minds. They have no idea, and I fucking despise them. But the GOP voters, they seem to have gotten that. And so it puts me in a tough position, though. Because that rhetoric is popular, I don't know of the candidates who is for real. You know? Like, Vivek came on my show. He sounds awesome. I don't know if he's fucking feeding me what I want to hear. I don't know that. So that it makes it really challenging. Not RFK, DeSantis, I don't trust him on his foreign policy. I just don't trust him. He doesn't have the same, like the gusto with which he approaches, critical race theory in school, or the sexual progressive indoctrination of children. Like, there's some passion when he talks about those things. When he talks about the war in Ukraine, it just doesn't sound the same way. Like when Trump did that town hall and he was asked about it, he's like, I'm going to end this war in 24 hours. This is crazy. This is as close to nuclear war as we've been since the Cuban Missile Crisis. Like, Trump sounded awesome. He killed it. That was a great answer. Even if he's full of shit, and he might be. He usually is. But like DeSantis, I just don't trust him on that. And to me, that's the biggest issue. It is the biggest issue. Even though I would love to see Fauci put in prison and, recompense or even reparations for the lockdowns, which is nonsensical because it would just come from taxpayer dollars. But you know what I'm saying? It's still a more important issue to me than anything, because I think that there's nothing more existential and more dangerous. So because of that, it puts me in a tough position where I don't want to support him. Vivek, he even came out yesterday. It was a big controversy. He voted Libertarian in his early 20s for president in 2004. Fucking awesome.
I saw that, yeah.
Yeah, and he had said it on my show that when he was a freshman in college, he was a Libertarian. And I didn't believe him when he told me that. And then a few days later, that article comes out, and it's like he voted for Michael Badnarik or whoever it was. And I was like, damn, all right. That points to Vivek. He really did think of himself as a libertarian in his early 20s. Like, that's awesome. So that puts me in a tough spot where I'm like, well, maybe it's just like my sensitivity to feeling like I'm being sold something, because I hate that. Like, on a visceral level, I hate it when I feel like someone's trying to sell me something. I hate it. And I feel like the way he talks sounds like a sales pitch all the time. And I don't like that. So I have to decide, who he really is. And I haven't made up my mind there. So I think, but then he also has some really, in my opinion, bad ideas when it comes to fentanyl and the cartels. But then he has some really great answers when it comes to the war in Ukraine. But then he has some pretty sketchy answers when it comes to Taiwan and China. So it's like, it's a mixed bag.
By the way, did you see that we sent $345 million in weapons aid to Taiwan today?
Yep. Well, we gotta, the proxy war in Ukraine is gonna end here soon, so we gotta keep the military industrial complex fed somehow, right?
I'm just, dude.
We're ruled by the most corrupt.
Never learn. We never learn.
We are ruled by the most corrupt motherfucking establishment in American history, and I don't think it's even close. Like, it is so deeply corrupt, man. And I'm just praying. I'm just praying that people are getting fed up to the level necessary to actually do something about it. And I don't mean violently. I just mean, like, you have to hold these people to account. You have to. You cannot go, oh, Biden sucks, so I'm gonna, give Trump another roll of the dice. It's like, no, man. We gotta go with someone who actually, like, not just has the principles to remedy this, but actually has the the fortitude and the willingness of self-sacrifice, the willingness to put their own self-interest, behind that of the American people. And I haven't seen that from really anybody that's running. The only people that could be possibly true about would be RFK and Vivek.
Yeah.
And I just don't know about them. So.
Yeah, so I kind of want to hone in on both of those guys. RFK first. I've been pretty critical online of him from the get-go, and my main issue with it was the libertarians were acting like he was like the libertarian savior and that sort of thing. And in my head, someone has to be, I think Dave Smith might have said this, but someone has to be the best Democrat, right?
Yeah.
So let him be the best Democrat, right, and leave it at that. But he is not. He is not libertarian, and libertarians need to quit simping for him, right? That's my opinion on it.
I actually disagree with that. I think that,
Really?
yeah, because I think that giving public support to someone who is 70% or 60% in alignment with us in a party that is, as of recent history, maybe fucking 5% in alignment with us, like that's such a huge improvement for what will be the leader of half of this nation ideologically moving forward. I'm going to cheer for that. And I don't even make any apologies for it. Like it's we're close enough to like complete collapse civilizationally, culturally, financially, militarily, on so many different levels that like, yeah, I'm going to applaud some, just some steps in the right direction, even rhetorically. Now, that doesn't mean, and I think that that's the reason you probably got pushback on that, is that I'm not saying he's the great libertarian hope. Like, no.
Yeah. Let me
No.
clarify a little bit. I just meant I don't want libertarians conflating him with libertarianism, right?
Sure.
Like if he's 60% better as a Democrat, then that's definitely something to cheer for,
Yeah.
But
And I
they
think
were
he
like,
is.
yeah,
Yeah, no, and I think he is. I mean, I think he's maybe even 70% better. Like he's pretty good, especially with his rhetoric as of late. Now, again, I don't know what he would actually do as president. Maybe he's only 20% better than Biden, but still, because his rhetoric is probably all that he will be able to impact, because I think the DNC will ultimately rip it out from underneath him. Well, then that's all that I have. That's all I care about. I just care about the fact that he is permitting the Democrats who have reflected on the insanity of the past 3 years. He's permitting them to have a critical thought for once in their fucking lives. That's awesome.
Yeah.
And it's sad that like people need a leader for them to feel comfortable to think for themselves, which doesn't really, that seems kind of like a oxymoron, but like that's kind of what they do. And same with Trump. Dave has also, detailed this out, where it's like Trump permitted the GOP to despise the neoconservative aspect of their party. That's fucking awesome progress. Like, even if Trump isn't as good on anti-war stuff as us, because he's not, that is just a huge cultural shift that like he gets a lot of the credit for that. And that's I'm not going to be overly harsh towards him because he's not a libertarian. Like that's a step in the right direction. RFK is a step in the right direction when it comes to prosecuting Fauci or abolishing the FBI or the CIA or avoiding World War III. Like, just, you gotta, like, if the libertarian presidential candidate is almost certainly not going to actually wield power, well, then we have to just try and give our verbal support, or at least in my case, it would be like, some positive coverage or influence on his campaign. I think it's worth doing. I want to incentivize people to mimic our verbiage, and if I see them doing that, I want to applaud that. That's all.
I gotcha. Do you think that you can give your support to both a libertarian candidate, like say Josh makes it? Do you think you can give your support to both him and one of the duopoly candidates at the same time?
I can do whatever I want because I am actually independent. Like, I don't know that I will, but like, I'm not going to box myself in. Like I've said this 1,000 times. Like, if someone's not running that I genuinely believe in on the libertarian ticket, I'm not gonna support anybody. Like, I'm just not gonna do it. Like, I am going to I'm going to do what the GOP never does to their party, or the Democrats never do to their party. I'm going to hold our party to the highest standard. I want a fucking killer in there. I want a goddamn beautiful Ron Paul, Dave Smith hybrid lunatic savage that's going to fucking shift the Overton window and shake people out of their goddamn slumber. That's what I want. And if I don't get that, then I'm not going to support you, period. So that's where I'm at on it.
Well, all you got to do is file, Clint.
Yeah, right. I don't want to, man. I really don't.
I don't blame you, man. I wouldn't either.
Yeah, it's just like, it would suck.
Can you imagine a ticket with Dave and you, though? Oh my God. God.
I would do it. I would do it if Dave were to do it. I would do it to get Dave to do it, I should say. Like, I would absolutely run for vice, to, make him feel comfortable about having a running mate that would be able to, back him up and add some things, maybe where aren't his strong points, like the ESG stuff or the financial end. It's like, dude, I would cherish that opportunity. It would be amazing.
I would love nothing more than to get you two on stage
Bro,
with some of these duopoly candidates.
we would fucking rock the world. Like, I think the earth would tilt off its axis. It would be so profound. And like, I know that sounds like I'm blowing myself, but I'm just being honest. Like, I think
No, it would be.
I think that it would fucking just shift the it would shift the poles on this planet. It would be so awesome. Oh God, I wish it could happen. I don't know. Maybe Dave will do it. Who knows?
Do you know any insight on that at all with Dave? Because it seemed like whenever the Mises takeover was happening, that was his intention, and then everybody kind of thinks we would have heard something by now if he was going to announce.
I mean, I do have some inside knowledge, but I'll keep that private. But
Sure.
I think that Dave is very much on the fence, and whether or not he's going to do it, I'm going to let him speak for himself on that. It's really not my business to spread. So I'm basically, I'll just put it like this: I am sitting patiently praying to God that he'll decide to do it. And I feel that's how Angela McArdle and Michael Heiss and Scott Horton and everybody else is feeling too. We all want to see him do it. I think we all know that he's the best messenger we have in this this generation, and I love the guy, and I think he's just fucking an absolute killer. He's an absolute savage, and I would do anything to see that happen. I mean, I would quit my show. I wouldn't take the job with Timcast. I would fucking do whatever he needed to get him, on the stage, even if they refuse to debate him, just get him on Rogan with, the Green Party candidate and the Socialist candidate, whatever. Like, it would be so rad to see it. And I think that he would really create as close to the Ron Paul revolution as you can within the Libertarian Party framework. I think he's the only person on earth that could do it to that level, and I stand by that.
Yeah, I agree. Reed was my guest on the episode before this, and he brought up a good point that maybe Dave's already doing all of that stuff without even announcing, because he's on Rogan, he's on Timcast, know.
No, I mean, Reed's right about that, but the reality is that even if the Libertarian candidate has no chance of winning, when you are running, when you are on the ballot, and you have those same conversations with Joe Rogan, it is more powerful. It just is. You can hate it. You can say it shouldn't be. It doesn't need to be. Everything he's saying is still just as important today as it would be if he was running for president. You're right. All of that's true. It doesn't change the fact that in the average person's mind, a presidential candidate, delivering the same sermons that Dave does, periodically on Joe Rogan's show, it just holds more gravitas when you're running for president. It just does.
Yeah, it's like when one of your friends is giving you advice and, it goes in one ear and out the other.
Right.
But then you have another friend that gives you the same exact advice,
right.
And then it registers with you for some reason.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. It's basically the same phenomenon, but it's, on a broad scale. That's what happens. It's like, sure, 10 or 15 million people will listen to every appearance that Dave's on with Rogan, but maybe it'll be 20 million, and half of the people listening will give it more credence because he's running for president, and they will actually seriously consider these ideas for the first time in their lives. And it also gives Dave an opportunity to answer questions in terms of libertarian solutions to what ails us that he doesn't necessarily delve into very often. And I think that would be important in terms of shifting the Overton window and the general populace's eyes as to how do we deal with all of the totalitarianism that we are languishing under. Like, how do we deal with it? Because there's going to be answers that are offered by the GOP that are terrible. And we have to have someone who's capable of, in a compelling, passionate, fashion, to explain that. And he could do that. So that's the reason I still keep the dream alive.
Yep, anxiously waiting.
Exactly.
Last thing I want to ask you about, Clint, is Vivek. I am cautiously optimistic. I was super happy to see when he went on Part of the Problem, and then he went on your show, Liberty Lockdown.
Yeah, it was crazy.
Um, and he answered my two biggest questions for Vivek on both of your shows. He answered kind of the Ukraine stuff on Part of the Problem, then he answered, the cartel of Mexico stuff on
Right.
yours. Um, so have you listened to that episode of Part of the Problem?
Yes, for sure.
Okay, so were those answers sufficient in your head?
I thought that his answers on Ukraine were sufficient. I thought he was actually on a Twitter Spaces today with Elon Musk and David Sachs, and he actually seems to have done even more research and gone even deeper on the Ukraine history. He started to talk about 91 and not 1 inch eastward, and he started to go through the whole history of it. And I was like, all right, he sounds almost exactly like RFK when he describes the path to how we got here. And they have very similar solutions. So I'm thrilled with that. To put it bluntly, no, I do not accept his response when it comes to the fentanyl, being this unique evil that we have to risk, creating a narco state or a complete collapse of civilization in Mexico to, keep fentanyl from our city streets. Like, no, I don't accept that at all. And I think he's wrong. So, but I do appreciate the fact that he was willing to clarify on my show that he is not a drug warrior, broad based, where he's like hardcore, put everybody in prison for cocaine and heroin and mushrooms and LSD and ecstasy and everything else. He seems to have a really sane, pretty rational approach to that, where he's like, I'm interested in, or I'm open to pass to decriminalization or legalization on a vast majority of these. And I was like, well, that's better than the average GOP presidential candidate in my lifetime. So as I said earlier with RFK, I'm going to applaud him for not being a total drug warrior, but I think he's fucking totally dead ass 180 degrees wrong on, like, we have to pressure the Mexican government to go after the cartels. Well, the Mexican government is the cartels, Vivek. So basically what you're saying is that we're going to send our military into Mexico to fight the cartels, keeping in mind that the drug trade of the cartels is managed by the cartels within this country, right? I mean, a huge percentage of the drugs are managed and sold, or at least muled by the Mexican cartels into America. So, like, do you think that they're just going to have, even though they're on our border, do you think that the war just stays in Tijuana? Or does that branch out into Chicago and San Diego? And
Do you think there might be a personal connection to this issue with him? Because he
how
seems
so?
to be he just seems to be the only one that's really championing that issue.
It is odd. I think, here's my honest opinion. I think that he knows that the fentanyl crisis is devastating to the GOP base, because so many of the poor conservative voters have lost family to addiction and to overdoses, and some of them have
Ooh,
died.
that's interesting. Yeah.
So I think that he is appealing to their better instincts because they love their family, and they've seen so many of their almost everybody has a relative or a friend of the family that they have seen go down the drug addiction path. Even I have some, and I think that because GOP voters respond favorably, even though it's stupid and naive, they respond favorably to strong men who say, I'm going to fix this. Even if I can't, I'm going to say it. And I think that's why he's done this. That's my read.
So I'm going to ask, you kind of hinted at this earlier, but I'm going to ask a little more directly. Do you trust what he is saying as far as all of these positions, or do you think he's picked up on the libertarian support, and he's playing into it and telling us things that we want to hear?
I think that he has libertarian leanings, and I think that he emphasizes them depending on who he's talking to. And I think that he's generally, even though he comes off as a salesman too much for my taste, I think that he's generally fairly in alignment with much of our belief system. I think that his understanding of ESG, the fact that he was writing these books, years before he ever ran for president, tells me that he understands this on a deep level, and he seems to really get it. Like he actually gets why this is a problem. I told him on my show to his face, I think he's the most intelligent person to ever run for president in this country. I think he's fucking genius level. The problem is that geniuses can be psychopaths. And I don't know for sure that he is sincere about everything he's saying.
Just look at Toad.
Exactly. Total psychopath. So I'm reserving judgment, I guess I should say. Like I like him. I think that, if he's for real, he's top 3 presidential candidate in my lifetime for sure. But is he for real? That's what matters, right? So yeah. I just until I have a real sense of that, I feel like I can't speak definitively on it, and I don't have a real sense of it. I talked to him for 30 minutes. We've been mutuals on Twitter for a couple months. Like, that's not enough. That's not enough. Like, that's why I wanted Dave to run so bad, because I actually know him personally, and I actually know he's for real. It just makes it so tough to now go back into the arena of having to or feeling as if I should try and support someone who I don't know if they're sincere. It sucks.
Do you have a preference between RFK and Vivek?
Yeah, probably Vivek. Probably. Just because I think that there's enough in RFK's history that comes across as a little dictator-y when it comes to like the climate change stuff. And ultimately, he's a Democrat, and he doesn't align with me when it comes to, financial sanity. He's been pretty good on Bitcoin, which I am very grateful for. But that's another one of those niches that, like, if you appeal to it, you can get a lot of support and you can get a lot of financial help. And I don't know for sure if RFK is sincere in going after that, just as I don't know for sure if Vivek is appealing to the libertarians and doing, smaller libertarian shows because he's a libertarian, or because he knows that could be the difference in New Hampshire. Like, it sucks, man. I hate to be so jaded and so skeptical, but like these are legitimate questions.
Skepticism is good.
Yeah, it's healthy. I would be doing my audience a disservice if I wasn't as inquisitive about these things and as skeptical as I am. So I'll keep people posted. I'm very open-minded about these guys. Like I would love to believe that they are 100% sincere in everything they say. But then RFK going around on this apology tour for Israel over the past week, and I'm like, damn, dude. like you're so courageous when it comes to the FBI and the CIA, but you look like petrified because Rabbi Shmuley is holding you to account because you said some scientific study that is not in no way is it anti-Semitic, and they're just like, well, now you have to apologize to us, and you have to go on stage and sit there for an hour and express in all of the ways in which Israel is superior to every other nation in the Middle East, and our support for them is infinite and indefinite, and we just love them, and they're better than us in every way. It's like, what the fuck is this?
It's not a good look.
I don't respect that, dude. Like, and just to make it crystal clear, because people always go, oh, you don't like Israel, you don't like the Jews. No. I don't respect politicians who talk about foreign nations as if they are the primary concern of their existence. It's fucking crazy. I don't care what nation it is. It's insane. It sounds totally nuts to me, and I hate it when they do that shit. So, yeah.
You know what I did love, though? Whenever Pence got put in his place after he said that one thing to Tucker Carlson at the presidential meeting deal a couple weeks ago.
Yeah.
Oh my
What did he
God.
say?
So funny. Tucker Carlson asked him about Ukraine and sending all the money over there when all of the cities here are getting worse by the day.
That's
and he was
not my
basically
concern.
like, that's not my concern. Oh my
Crazy,
God.
dude.
He just dug his own grave right there. I love to see it.
I loved it. I loved every minute of it. I love Tucker Carlson, man. Like he's, a lot of libertarians will always couch that statement with like, I don't agree with him on everything. I don't give a fuck about that. I love Tucker Carlson. I think that he's awesome. I think
Yeah,
that he like,
I love when people hold candidates' feet to the fire. You know?
yeah, dude, hell yeah. Of course, he's not a libertarian. We have plenty of disagreements. That's not the point. Dude seems to be really interested in pursuing the truth. That's fucking rare. That is
Yeah,
so
they'll
rare.
they'll also bring up his support for the Iraq War and all that
Yeah.
kind of stuff. But
Which he has apologized 1,000 times for it.
apologized, and it seems like he's learned from it. And I'm a big
Totally.
proponent of giving people enough grace to over the years learn from their mistakes and like change their ideas and change the way that they think. If you don't
As
have grace
long
for
as
that,
as
yeah,
long
go
as it's
ahead.
sincere. As long as it's sincere. It
Yeah,
has to be
absolutely.
sincere. It has to be heartfelt. You have to have reflected. You have to have actually dug deep, looked within your soul, had some pain, some anguish that actually catalyzed this change in you. Did all of that transpire? Can you express it? Can you tell me your mindset prior and now? Because if you can, then I can once again relate to you as opposed to the monstrous thing that you once were. This has been my entire critique against the COVIDians and the lockdown proponents. I will welcome you with open arms, but not until you acknowledge that what you supported was evil, you realize that, and you're sorry. Like these are the prerequisites to a path to redemption. I agree with you entirely. There must be a path to redemption. If you don't believe in a path to redemption, then you're probably in a cult. And I'm not in a cult. And I'm a very loving person. And I ultimately would love to forgive everyone that was responsible for the COVID stuff. But not until there's a price paid by those that actually started it, and not until there's some semblance of reflection and apologetics from those that participated in it and gleefully so. Like those people, man, you got to really reflect on what the fuck you are. Like, who are you, dude? Like,
Yep.
look yourself in the mirror, for God's sakes. You were cool with 50 million people potentially being out of a job? Like, really? That's who you are? That's who you've become because you refused a product from Big Pharma? Like, man, I just fucking pray to God people are actually thinking about that, because it's like the same people, and I'll get in trouble for it. Don't care. It's like the people that participated in the Holocaust, but they didn't like kill people, but they were just like they were there. They didn't actually kill anybody, but they were there, and they stood in the crowd and they clapped when Hitler gave his speech. It's like, that's what you were, dude. Like, you didn't commit the heinous acts per se, but you didn't fucking do the right thing when it mattered. You weren't actually helping people get out of the fucking concentration camps, were you? And
Yep. Or the people that were just saying, well, it's my job.
Yeah, well, those people, I think you just need to go to jail.
Yeah.
If it was your job to actually commit heinous acts, then you should go to jail. But if you were just one of the people that lived there, that was Aryan, so you weren't in jeopardy, you need to look in the mirror and say, why did I bite my tongue? Why did I not do more to help people? Because so few people did. And that includes the GOP, for the record.
Yeah, 100%. Well, let's end on a high note, Clint. Do you want to shout anything out before we go?
Sure. I hope people will check out that episode I did with Vivek. It was short. It was only a little over 30 minutes, but it was a good one. I've been doing a lot of solos as of late, so if anybody wants to check out the show, it's Liberty Lockdown on YouTube, Spotify, Rumble, Apple Podcasts, everywhere. And I will be on Timcast IRL 9 days from now. I think 10 days from now. It'll be August 7th or 8th. It's Monday, I believe. So check me out there. And
Awesome.
Tower Gang, if you want to
Yeah.
see me be racist for fun, because it's fun.
Are you moving for Timcast, or are you working remote for that?
I would be moving if we come to terms.
Okay.
There was an offer made. There was a counter made. We did not come to terms. I am going back out there to discuss it again. So I hope we can come to terms, because I would love to do it more than anything, but I need to be compensated in a way that I'm comfortable with. So if it doesn't happen, I still think the world of those guys, and there will be no bad blood. I'm not that type, but I'm just being open and honest about why there's an impasse and why you haven't seen me out there full time. But that's for those that don't know, like, the plan is for me to be in the fifth chair rotation, where I'd be on twice a week on IRL, and then I would host Poker with the Boys, and then the other aspect of it, which I don't know if he wants it to be public, so I won't say, but there was a big job I was going to take on for him, and that's where the impasse is as to
running the coffee shop.
something.
That's awesome, man. I do want to shout out one of your other episodes too. You did a 20 or 30-minute episode on the SBV bank.
Yes.
And that kind of goes hand in hand with all the CBDC talk today and all the banking stuff. So that is a great episode to educate yourself on what happened there. So
yeah, that was actually I think that was a Rumble exclusive, because I think that's when I was banned from YouTube for a while. So I would encourage people to check that out. If you don't understand it, it's only 15 minutes long, and I absolutely fucking just lay out everything. I
think it's on Spotify too, because that's where I listen to most stuff.
No, sorry, it's on all the audio places. But I'm saying if you're a video watcher, then I think it's a Rumble exclusive.
Sweet. Well, hey guys, I appreciate you being here. If y'all will sub and like and do all that kind of stuff, it helps.
Leave
out
a comment.
Greatly.
Help with the algorithms.
Go follow Clint and Liberty Lockdown.
Fucking jerk offs. Hit the subscription button. Don't just come here, watch me, and then leave. Hit the subscription. Hit the like button, and then leave a comment and tell him how great he is, and then find a wife in the comments, and then just be cool, and then love yourself, and then look yourself in the mirror and say, "I did good today." Do that.
'Cause you did.
Yeah.
All right. See you guys.